might notice that some of these stories are about surrounding cities like Sheridan, Virginia Town, Wheatland. In my opinion, these are Lincolnites, right? So this is where they buy their groceries, meet their friends, attend social gatherings, and they're just as much part of Lincoln as any of us. Okay, on with the story. So if you ever drive north out past Lincoln on Lincoln Boulevard after dark, past the open fields, past the hum of the last street light where the roads start to feel older than the map, you'll notice something kind of strange. It's not the quiet. Sheridan's always been quiet. It's the way the quiet hangs there, like it's waiting for something. Maybe it is, They call it Sheridan's Forgotten Cemetery, and it drapes over their local lore like a blanket. If you believe the lore, or even just listen long enough to this story, you'll start to understand why some folks say the land remembers who we've forgotten. Before Lincoln had a traffic light, Sheridan was already busy. Back in the late 1800s, it was a rail stop, a ranching town, like a way station, basically, for folks moving east towards Auburn or west towards the city. The trains would stop, rattle in with freight, supplies, wood, sometimes soldiers. There was a school, a church, a blacksmith, and as every small town needed back then, a place to bury its dead. Not a grand ceremony with marble angels and iron fences, just a patch of ground with wooden markers and hand-carved names that didn't always spell, or they weren't always spelled right. No one knows exactly when it started. Some say the 1850s, other closer to 1875, but everyone agrees that it sat near the edge of town, right near where the trees start to crowd the field. I guess you'd have to be there. When families moved away, there wasn't anyone left to tend the graves. Boards fell, names faded, and one by one, the people who remembered where the folks were buried died too. The railroad moved, just like Highway 65 moved on them. The blacksmith shop burned down, the town shrank, but that small patch of land, the cemetery, never did. The private property, I'll try and describe it the best I can, basically just a bunch of sage and dry grass pushing through forgotten rows, splintered fence posts still trying to stand. Every so often you'll find a little corner of a stone poking through the weeds. There's really not much to find out there. They say after a rain, the ground sinks, softer in certain spots. They say they're the old graves breathing again for a day or two. Anyways, and that's where the sightings start. So the first story I could find came in from an old Lincoln Messenger clipping back in the 1930s. It reports that evidence was found to indicate a local man was buried alive after being convicted as a horse thief. The man who was sentenced to death was a burly man, thick neck. Ultimately, when he was hung, it didn't work and he was not dead. According to the legend, the undertaker was the brother of the farmer whose horses were stolen. And when he saw that the man was still alive, he nailed him, he nailed the coffin shut and went to his brother Eli. By the time they returned, the man was awake and pounding on the walls of the coffin. The undertaker and his brother Eli decided that the best thing to do is to just bury the coffin like they were instructed. So they tossed the coffin in the ground and buried it. As he was lowered into the grave, he began scratching and banging around, and he actually managed to make his way out of the coffin and dug himself out of the grave. He literally survived being buried alive, but he was furious at the undertaker and his brother that so cavalierly decided just to go ahead and bury him. He decided he would get back at him. So what he did was fill the grave back up and hide out for a week or two, just kind of like drop off the radar. Everybody thought he was dead. Then after about a week or so, he knew the undertaker would make his rounds in the cemetery and could surprise and kill him. So he waited in the cemetery for the undertaker to make his rounds. When he saw him, it was the horse thief he buried just the week before looking at him. It gave the undertaker the impression that the angry ghost was attacking him. So the undertaker passed out. When the undertaker woke up, he found himself buried in the horse thief's coffin. That's where the story kind of starts to get a little creepy. Remember, everyone in town thinks that the undertaker is missing and the horse thief is dead and buried. The locals sent out a search parties from the Buttes to Auburn Ravine and found nothing. And then so soon the undertaker's home went abandoned, and eventually everyone forgot about the mystery. The horse thief thought that, you know, in the name of justice, he would take the undertaker's property. After growing a beard and becoming a little more weathered from time, the horse thief decided it was finally safe enough to go downtown and buy some things to make his life a little easier out there. In a twist of fate, the undertaker's brother recognized him, but before the man was able to get to the sheriff, the horse thief snatched him up and took him to his brother's old house. He knocked him out and tied him up. He went out to the barn and made a rudimentary coffin from pine boards and tossed the man into it, nailing it shut. He tortured the man for days, leaving him in there and occasionally knocking on the side of the 7-foot pine box made of scrap wood. After a few days, the horse thief decided to lower the coffin into the ground, and over the next week, slowly covered the hole with dirt. He buried a pipe down in the hole in the coffin so that he could hear the tortured screams, and dropped food down occasionally to keep the man alive a little bit longer. From that day forward, the undertaker has haunted the lost cemetery, knocking on every coffin being lowered for its funeral and its final rest. Eventually, in 1875, the city moved the graveyard to a new location where souls rest to this day. The historic cemetery was left to rot, but from time to time, travelers on horseback would hear the scratching on wood as they passed by. A farmer later bought the land, that the undertaker used to own, and said it sounded like he had a scratching at his door every night, but he blamed it on the rodents. He didn't really believe in that sort of thing. One time he saw a man dressed like he was, in the Old West on horseback looking for something along the fence line. He called out, thought maybe it was a neighbor caught after dark, but, the guy never turned his head, just kept on riding. The deputy blamed it on moonlight when he reported it, but, and that maybe the guy had a little too much whiskey. But the farmer never rode past that part of his ranch alone again, so... In the 1950s, a Sheridan couple told almost the same story. They were driving home from the Lincoln after visiting with friends, and their headlights caught something by the ditch, and it was a man on horseback. They said it looked like a man getting off a horse, one hand on a fence post. When they slowed down, the figure lifted its head, and both of them swore later they saw the man evaporate before their eyes. They drove home very fast, and the car, they said, it smelled like death all the way home to their own driveway. Her husband was in the Army, and he said that he had seen death firsthand, and he said it had the distinct smell of dead body. He went on to say that the smell of decaying human body was different. You can't even compare it to anything else, and so he was certain what the odor was. People had scenarios like one of them stepped on cow flop or, hit an animal and it lodged somewhere under the car. Nobody really knows, though. Then there's the story of Eli Branner, and he shows up once in the county records in 1908, listed as the caretaker for the, Sheridan burial plot. After that, nothing. No obituary, no census, just no trace. Some locals started calling the figure folks see near the fence Old Eli. Mostly he's just a shadow in the oaks, always quiet, always watching. One man told me, "It's not scary, Mike. It's sad. Like somebody's trying to remind me of a name I should already know." You can explain it, though. I mean, fog, fence wire, headlights, maybe kids added to the myth until it started walking on its own. Or maybe the land around Sheridan just remembers better than most. Old and new grief gets in the soil, and the soil doesn't forget. So, reality check. Sheridan really was thriving ranch town by the 1880s, and it really did have a small local cemetery that had been there since 1845 to 1875. But it was a bustling town since 1854 and occupied since long before then. Some say that the missing cemetery refers to areas in the existing cemetery that was no longer marked because the wood markers decayed over time. Many were buried on their own property back then. As families left and the records faded, the graves went unattended and nature reclaimed them. People have reported shapes, lights, and the smell of flowers out there for decades. Nothing is provable, nothing is official, certainly never officially recorded. And this is just a ghost story, right? But it's enough to keep the story alive. So it's kind of fun. So if you're ever out that way late, maybe you missed your turn, maybe you just like quiet roads, who knows, and you see a cluster of trees where the oak's leaning close, roll the window down, listen if the crickets go quiet and the air smells like lilac. Say a name, and you name it all. Because maybe, that's all the forgotten want. It's just to be remembered once before the road takes you home. So that's the story of Sheridan's Forgotten Cemetery. Thanks for watching another Strange Stories of Lincoln. Keep your eye out for the next episode. If you like this one, share it on YouTube with someone who cares about our town or simply likes storytelling. So, as always, I'm Mike Crossfield, a local business owner trying to build a stronger Lincoln together. Till next time, have a spooky Halloween.